Yeah, I understand that. So again, though, I want to make sure that everybody understands that Donald Trump is a giant coward who ran for Vietnam and wanted poor people and middle-class people to die on his behalf. But to be fair, his daddy's doctor note was really sterling, well paid for.
Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks and Will Chamberlain, a right-wing commentator, debated about Kamala Harris's vice presidential pick, Tim Walz, on the show Counterpoints with Ryan and Emily. They debated at length about Tim Walz. They covered multiple topics. The entire thing is about a half hour long. You can go to the Breaking Points YouTube channel if you want to watch the whole thing. I have a few clips from this that I thought were particularly interesting. Things get heated at times. Let's check this out.
Tim Walz VP selection. We've got Will Chamberlain, kind of a new right conservative activist writer.
Attorney.
And an attorney as well. And we've got Cenk Uygur, host of TYT's main show. Cenk, Will, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And Cenk, let's start with you, because talk to us about how you were feeling during the kind of Veep stakes competition, which interestingly was kind of what we had been proposing Democrats do for their actual nomination, is to have this kind of an open process where it wasn't necessarily going to lead to actual people voting, but by the general vibes of the country, somebody would emerge as an obvious favorite. And that seemed to happen here. Like it was a participatory democratic process, even if nobody got to go and actually cast votes. So how did you feel about the kind of VP selection before, before the process kicked off, and how did you feel about it by the end of it?
Yeah, I felt many different things. First of all, I felt told you. Second of all, apprehension. And then at the end, elation. So told you as in, look at all these amazing Democratic candidates. This is why we thought that Biden should step aside, because the idea that Biden was the best that the Democrats had to offer was so preposterous at this late stage in his life. I'm like, how about the governor of Pennsylvania or Michigan or Kentucky or apparently Minnesota? And it turned out when we looked into them, they were all fantastic. I told you. Of course, there's a lot of great Democrats out there. Now, the apprehension part was, I was like, oh no, here we go again with the Democrats. With all these great candidates out there, if they pick like a Mark Kelly snooze fest because they think they already have this thing won, or even worse, the corporate Lego man, Pete Buttigieg, all this will have been for naught, and then I would have put them back as underdogs. But they didn't. They didn't. And at the end, I felt elation as, I can't believe they made the best pick. I can't believe that the last two were the best two, Josh Shapiro and Tim Walz. So that couldn't have gone any better.
Well, let's start electorally. So just cynically, like setting aside what you think about the policies that this ticket is going to put forward, electorally, from your perspective on the right, how do you think this pick plays?
Which, by the way, I want to add is an important addition to what Cenk just said, is that, is Tim Walz a good candidate? To Ryan's point, is he a good candidate for Democrats, or do his vulnerabilities, as you see them, outweigh the potential advantages that he brings to the ticket?
I think among the finalists, he's the pick we're happiest to see as Republicans. We were worried about Josh Shapiro. We think that Josh Shapiro has massive favorability ratings in what's most likely to be the tipping point state. If you saw him speak yesterday at that rally, he's a hell of an orator. Like, just real talk, the guy can speak. He made a pretty good joke too when people said he was compared to Barack Obama. He's like, well, Obama's a pretty good orator, so I'm not upset about that comparison. So we were worried about Shapiro. Tim Walz makes this a very simple election. It's Make America Great Again versus Make America Burn Again. They are going to have the Minneapolis riots hanging over their head for the next 3 months. It's going to be an immigration and crime election. They're going to have to explain why Tim Walz decided to let rioters run wild while he twiddled his thumbs, and then why Kamala Harris promoted a fund to bail those rioters out.
So what Will Chamberlain brings up here, that Josh Shapiro was who they were worried that the Democrats would pick and who they think the Democrats would pick, and that Tim Walz is a bad pick. This seems to be the right-wing corporate line, basically, that that they're all saying this, that they were the most afraid of Josh Shapiro. I don't think that what he's saying here about the riots and all that with Tim Walz, I don't think that's going to land. And they think that we'll get into this more as the debate goes on, but they think he's this crazed socialist and all this stuff. But right now, he has the highest favorability rating of the four candidates. Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, J.D. Vance, and Tim Walz is by far the most popular. So I think that this is a be careful what you wish for right-wingers and MAGA. The guy seems like he was a good pick.
Yeah, what do you think, Cenk?
All right, first of all, let's all be amused by the idea of someone who definitely should not be running. If they didn't call the National Guard soon enough and they just twiddled their thumbs while there was a riot happening, like on January 6th. Awkward. Okay. So listen, it's hilarious that we have agreement here. He thinks Tim Walz is the best candidate for them. I think Tim Walz is the best candidate for us. The brother passed all these wonderful laws that are intensely popular. Paid family leave, free lunches for poor kids. By the way, free college for lower income families so they can compete with rich families, which Republicans are going to hate. And they did hate. They voted against it. He's passed so many economically populist bills, and then just popular bills like legalizing marijuana. And so all of these poll at over 70%. So if they're going to run on Tim Walz's record, they're going to run straight into our iceberg. And I love it. Please make the case against the American people, how they shouldn't have paid family leave. They shouldn't have child tax credits. They shouldn't have abortion rights. Go for it. Go for it. Make our day.
Now, the issues that Cenk Uygur is talking about, these are all things that tend to rile up right-wingers and MAGA types. But they're very popular with the general public. Most people are in favor of free school lunches for kids. I live in a very poor county, one of the probably poorest counties in the United States, and my county has free school lunches for all kids, regardless of income. And I know right-wingers locally that just makes them furious. But a majority of normal people agree with that. So, like Cenk Uygur says here, right-wingers aren't going to agree with that, and MAGA's not going to agree, but the issues that keep being brought up about Tim Walz, that the right wing is trying to paint him as some kind of crazy communist or socialist, are very popular with the general public.
But by the way, don't get me wrong. I like Josh Shapiro. I favor Josh Shapiro. But this whole thing that they do after every pick is like, well, if you'd picked the other guy, that would have we would have been scared of that guy. But you picked this guy, we're thrilled. I've seen this 2,000 times over.
So, Will, I imagine what was going through your head, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but as Cenk was talking about some of these popular and sort of genuinely populist economic policies that the likes of Sohrab Ahmari and others, even on the new right, have looked at and said, there's some interesting stuff in here economically that is popular with voters, whether or not it's right or wrong, popular with voters at the very least. What was probably coming through your mind was some of the cultural policies that Walz has passed. So that would be on LGBT issues, immigration issues, the way he's talked about both of those issues that create vulnerabilities for him. So is that something that, as Republicans are looking at this, you think drags Walz down, drags Kamala Harris down from now until November, Will?
Yeah, I mean, it's not 2012. Mitt Romney's not at the top of the ticket with Paul Ryan. We're not about to run on, cutting entitlement spending or bending the cost curve or whatever. So it's a very different Republican Party. The head of the Teamsters spoke at the Republican convention. We're not going to be running on child tax credits are bad. The real problem with Walz, first off, obviously, immigration. Walz has allowed for taxpayer money to go to paying for illegal immigrants' college. That's something we're certainly going to run on. I'm generally of the view that American taxpayers' money should benefit American citizens and not the opposite. He's got some very big issues on the trans stuff. It's not merely do trans people exist. This is stuff like he's going to make it impossible for red states to set laws that prohibit transgender surgeries on children. And you know, I like, as much as Cenk wants to say this stuff is popular, this stuff is not popular. You know, beacons of reactionary conservatism like England and Norway and Sweden have banned all these treatments. This is stuff that's not going to go well with the broader public. And then there's also the biggest issue, which I think with Walz, which really hasn't been covered. He's a deployment dodger. He was in the National Guard. He was the leader of a unit. And the moment that the Iraq war, that his unit was about to deploy, he just said, sorry, guys, have fun, and just let them all go off to Iraq. And 3 of them died.
Okay, let me answer that. So the brother was in the National Guard for 27 years. He got at least 3 medals that I saw. And he enlisted. He's the highest enlisted ranked member of the armed services to ever serve in Congress. And you're going to compare him to Commander Bone Spurs, who ran from Vietnam, and they asked him, hey, your daddy wrote you a note about how you had bone spurs in your ankle. Which ankle was it? And he's like, I don't, maybe both. Your guy's a total, utter coward. He ran from Vietnam and then later bragged that his Vietnam was dodging STDs at the orgies he was going to. So you want to compare him to a guy who served for 27 years? Have at it, Hoss.
Now, one thing with Tim Walz, this has been a big thing that the right-wingers like Will Chamberlain here have tried to pin on Tim Walz, that he was some kind of a deserter or something from the military and abandoned his troops. He retired from the National Guard 2 months before they were going to be deployed to Iraq. Now, he was very outspoken against the Iraq war, which I think is the correct stance to have, that one that even Donald Trump has had. It said that, you know, we wasted money and lives. And I think that is the majority of Americans believe in that. But he left the military 2 months before his unit was going to be deployed. So it wasn't like they said, oh, we're leaving tomorrow. And he was like, nope. And he deserted. So this is really an area where right-wingers like Will Chamberlain have twisted the truth. Now, Cenk Uygur doesn't bring that up here, but.
Yeah, I'll go right back at you on that. My guy's the guy who got shot in the face and got up screaming, fight, fight, fight. Your guy, who's a 47-year-old man supervising teenagers and, you know, young men who are about to go to the war, leading them for years. The moment they're about to deploy, walks off the job. Total loser. Anybody's a coward in this race, it's Tim Walz.
You're nuts. So you're saying actually defending the country is cowardly if you do it for decades on end and you win.
When did he defend the country?
Hold on,
the one chance he had a chance to do it, he quit.
You don't get to talk over me.
Sorry. Okay, fair enough.
And then wins the Nebraska Citizen Soldier of the Year. He wins every award there is. And then you go, well, no, you didn't serve 30 years. You didn't serve 40 years. Your guy served 0 years.
Okay, so Cenk, though, could you respond to what Will said about immigration, trans issues? Okay, so Cenk, though, could you respond to what Will said about immigration, trans issues, causing vulnerabilities for Walz? I mean, it is true that as popular as some of those economic policies might be, those are way more fraught issues. And Walz, who really relied on Minneapolis to win his gubernatorial election, as Steve Kornacki pointed out on MSNBC yesterday, those are tougher sells outside of Minneapolis on some of those big cultural issues.
Yeah, I understand that. So again, though, I want to make sure that everybody understands that Donald Trump is a giant coward who ran for Vietnam and wanted poor people and middle-class people to die on his behalf. But to be fair, his daddy's doctor note was really sterling, well paid for. Okay, so now in terms of those issues, look, it depends on how you ask the questions on immigration, trans rights, et cetera. And so if you say, oh my God, the police department and the fire department in Minnesota are wrong. They shouldn't have driver's licenses, even though it would make the cops' lives much, much easier in identifying them. And I can't believe that an undocumented immigrant would ever get anything. They should be demonized and we should hate them and we should pretend that they're evil. Okay, you can go that route. You could run a hate-filled campaign. And by the way, it might resonate with some people. I get it. But we're going to come back and double down on how he helped the average American, and his economic bills are overwhelmingly popular. Well, in fact, 90% of the bills that he's passed are overwhelmingly popular. Here's a guy who was a teacher, a football coach, and from the Midwest. I almost pulled a Trump and said from the Middle West. As if that's a thing that we say. Yeah. Okay, so look, compared to a loser, bankrupt businessman and a vulture capitalist, have at it, Hoss. Okay, tell us about how popular you guys are. And, we have the most popular billionaires and Wall Street tycoons on our side. Go for it, okay? But I don't think those are going to play well at all. I think they're going to get their asses handed to them.
I think Cenk Uygur is right about this. Particularly the trans issues. It affects, the Republican Party has made trans issues such a big part of their platform and what they talk about and think about all the time. And there are so few trans people in the United States and in the world. I mean, it's just a tiny number of people that the Republican Party has tried to create a boogeyman out of them. And I think it's just something that the vast majority of most Americans do not spend much time thinking about. They're thinking about things like school lunches and cost of college and, what happens if you get sick? Are you going to go bankrupt even if you have insurance because of high medical bills? So Cenk Uygur is right about this. The Republicans, like Will Chamberlain, want to make a big deal out of trans issues, and most people, I think, just do not care. But what do you think about this? What these clips that we saw from this debate, again, it's not the whole thing. You can go to the Breaking Points channel and watch all of it. Who do you think won in these sections? Do you think Cenk Uygur came out ahead? Do you think it was Will Chamberlain? Was it a draw? Do you agree with neither of them? Let me know in the comments. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. That helps me to grow the channel and share more debates like this about Tim Walz, Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, J.D. Vance, all of these people that we're going to be focused on for the next few months, and there will be lots and lots of debates like this. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.